Hello, it's Sue Blacker, and I'm so pleased to be able to talk with you, even though at rather a long distance. Hope everybody's well in Scotland, and I hope that you'll be interested and having a great day at this Scottish Smallholders Festival. I've got a short, well, medium length PowerPoint presentation to show you, and afterwards I hope that there will be time for people to send questions or in some way communicate any questions they may have. So here's my presentation, and of course it's for Saturday the 24th of October, and it's from me and the Natural Fibre Company and Blacker Yarns. Now, I am no longer the owner of Natural Fibre Company and Blacker Yarns, but I am still a part-time consultant and advisor and work with them on developing new projects and generally trying to help them in any way that I can with my background expertise. So today I want to talk about selling wool in a pandemic, aspects of the wool price cycle, how to add value to wool and whether it's different or the same in the new world, and also various different approaches that can be taken which depend on the type of raw fleece and the type of finished products that you can make. So wool prices have crashed. British wool's not paying a first payment. There's lots in the media about how dreadful it all is and how farmers are burning their wool and everything else. Some stabilisation has just about taken place. The last auction from British wool was a little bit up, and they managed to sell about 2/3 of what they put up for auction. So things are not entirely black and disastrous, but it's still pretty awful when you consider that they're 50p a kilo now compared to 86p in January. And I've given you, the slides will be available if people want them, so any links that you see on these slides will be available. Different prices have fallen differently. Crossbred, coarse, strong wools have no market, and British wool is still having difficulty selling those, whereas fine wools are beginning to start a little bit of recovery. So what can you do in those circumstances? Well, of course, you can still sell to British wool or another wool merchant. Some of the other independent wool merchants do pay cash, though less usually. You can dump it, bury it, burn it. It will biodegrade, it will become a fertilizer. You can use it for mulch around trees. You can do various things like that to at least make use of what may be worthless. You can store it and hope that prices will eventually recover. My shearer told me last year, he said, prices are looking really, really good. And even if they crash with COVID, I think you should put it all in the barn and just wait, because the natural fibres will recover. Or of course, you can sell it to someone else or invest yourself in adding value. Now, the thing about adding value is there's a load of stuff about world wool prices and British wool, and actually there's a lot of information on this slide, and I am going to tell you, and I'll show you why, that you should largely ignore it. So here is a chart which shows for the last 110 years, 120 years, the wool price. It's been indexed, so you will see that there are two lines between sort of 100 and 100, or 90 and 150, and a lot of the time the wool's in that area, but once in a while it rockets up above that and then crashes back. I think a lot of people think when it's gone up that that's where it's going to be naturally, but of course there is a long-term range which shows that it isn't like that. If you look at that over the last 30 years, then prices have actually been pretty strong, although there was some weakness in 1990. And in the last few years, there have been two really quite strong peaks, although with the COVID, it's come right back again now. Even now, though, in US dollars, it's still well above what it was in 1990. So all is not black. However, the key fact is, and this slide is perhaps the most important, it's also not very distinct. I'm sorry about that. I borrowed these slides from other places. This one shows the effect of pandemics. And the reason why this is important is because China is the world market. To all intents and purposes, Chinese buyers, Chinese breeders determine all the prices worldwide, both for fine wools and for carpet wools. So this is what you have to watch all the time. So if you look at that for you as looking at how you deal with your wool, you can sell some now, you can get no reward at all, you can wait for a while, but it does look a bit optimistic at the moment, and you can add value. And so what I'm really going to talk about is adding value. And there aren't so very many options when you do add value as you might think. If the wool is good, it's cheap and easy to sell it to hand spinners. If you do that, you have a very good chance that one single fleece, if it's really nice, provided you've cleaned it up, tidied it, skirted it, you could get £30 for that. That will pay for an awful lot of sheep to be shorn. If it's coarse, you'll get less, but you can sell to peg loom weavers. They love it, natural colours for weaving on peg looms for small rugs. Many people who do that don't mind if it's greasy because they actually shrink the whole spun and woven thing down afterwards to make a dense, small mat or rug. You can make products yourself or you can get it processed elsewhere. So why do I think it's still worth doing all of this? Well, actually, we saw clean air. We saw skies free of aircraft. We saw much reduced litter. We saw a load of things that happened because people were actually moving around less. And they are also, because they're in many cases looking again at their lives, they are looking at ocean plastic. They're looking at Extinction Rebellion. They're thinking about the longer term. And natural fibres, sustainable fibres, wool is the perfect answer to many of these. Doesn't mean to say it's going to happen overnight. It's not going to replace polyester, unfortunately, as quickly as we would like, but it will happen. So here is a slide which I use quite often and update for prices, and it shows the various options as you go through increasing the value and, of course, the cost of the product. Because of the versatility of wool, when you get to throws and blankets and scarves, there are so many options that the prices range quite dramatically. But if you start with raw fleece, you should be able to get a bit for it, and you should be able to get a bit more if you've washed it and add it to blends. If you then get it scoured and carded or do it yourself, you can charge for it. And then if you want to make yarns, you can charge even more. And so the top level gives you the list of what are the output options. The middle row shows the rough costs, and then the potential selling prices are shown in the green bottom band. So if you are very good at it, and it's not just a question of being good at processing, it's also about good at marketing and good at designing, then you can get £800 for some things that you've made. If you look at some of the, I'll come to it, some of the case studies, you will find that people can make quite a lot of money if they really work at it. So it isn't easy, it isn't cheap, and you have to take your time. One of the things that's really important is what sort of wool do you have? If you have coarse, dirty, mucky, matted wool, nobody's going to want it, and it's better used as a fertilizer. You have to make the most of that wool for its market. So if it's fine, it's between 20 and 27 microns, then you can make good knitting yarns. At 20 and below, that's where merino starts, and in a way merino is the Australians' word for wool, and they've tried to persuade everybody else that everything else isn't actually wool at all, and merino is the only thing that counts. So that's one of the reasons why there has to be significant effort on marketing. But if you've got something over 30 microns, it's not worthwhile making into a hand knitting or garment yarn. It will need to make insulation or rugs or carpets. You have to be realistic, and that's something that I know lots of people find hard to recognize. If you then want in the end to look at the best options, you will find that probably amongst your sheep there are some good ones and less good ones, and it's selecting amongst sheep also that matters. In any pen waiting to be shorn, I will guarantee there's probably one fleece that you can get 20 or 30 pounds for, whereas the others you might get less than £1 for them. And it's knowing and picking those out that really makes a difference. So why is it so expensive? Well, this is a rough indication of all the things that happen if you have your wool processed, or indeed if you do it yourself. You have to sort it or get it sorted. You have to scour or get it scoured. You then have to blend and tease it. You have to card, you have to woolen spin, or even comb and worsted spin. And then when you've done that, you have to ply it. You have to wash it again to make it nice, and you have to finish it into balls and label it. All of that takes time. So all of that is something that if you are working as a hand spinner, I estimate that you should be charging, and then knitting a pullover, for example, you could be charging £600 or £800 for that pullover if you just costed your hours at the minimum wage. So that is something to bear in mind. If you do that and you make a garment that you've made yourself with uneven yarn, unless it's very artistically uneven and that's badly knitted and badly finished and a nasty colour, then no matter how much work you put into it, it will not sell for 600 quid. If on the other hand you've made something that's beautifully finished, nicely labelled, packaged up with a picture of your sheep on the front saying this is from my farm, all of those things, and it's a nice design, a nice long lasting classic design, then of course you can expect to get quite a lot of money. But you then have to find the right sort of customers as well. So marketing doesn't only consist of telling people about it, it's telling the right people, the ones who will be interested and willing to pay. So just as a footnote, you may not have a small specialist region or breed. You might have a large commercial flock. Bear in mind, mule of various types, Scotch mule, has some of it is wonderful. And this is what I said earlier, there will always be a few great fleeces in every flock. And you can, even when you're breeding for conformation and meat, if you select secondly for wool quality as well, then you can get to somewhere where you will actually have gradually improve the quality of your fibre and be able to do things which will in fact add more value. And as I've been saying several times, marketing is essential. Now we're very lucky in the UK. We have got not just Woolsack, but actually also Ravelry. There are two things which work. Ravelry is international, but Woolsack is really important for the UK. So supposing that you've got your wool all ready to go, you can actually sell it as a fleece, or you can sell it as a yarn, and Woolsack has lists of all the people who do that. Making it yours is really important, but Woolsack will only do a certain amount, and anyone who uses Woolsack and then doesn't follow up on inquiries is just upsetting everybody else who uses Woolsack, and indeed your potential customers. It really is important if you get an inquiry to follow it up. So having your own website and media accounts will help. And this is one thing that's really important. Everybody now has seen, I think, the huge growth in the independent dyer. There are many, many of them. And you can have a full-time day job, go home in the evening, cook up something pretty, hang it up to dry, put it on your website the next day and sell it. Doesn't take much stock, doesn't take much time. It does take a little bit of trying to be different from everyone else, and it takes quite a lot of personality to put into your blog and your website to make it look sufficiently different for people to become interested. And indeed, even though there are no live shows these days, there are plenty of online ones, and this is a new opportunity for you. So here in Scotland, just in Scotland, and this is only Scotland, there are all these possible ideas. The Uist wool mill in the Hebrides, the Border mill, the Knock and Do, which focuses, as does New Lanark, on being a heritage tourist attraction. Those are all mills. They don't all do everything for everyone, and in fact, probably Border mill is the only one at the moment who's taking in a lot of orders, because Uist tends to just process local wool for its own purposes. Nevertheless, and New Lanark, you need 250 kilos to start with. Nevertheless, they're all there. Berlin yarns. Now, Meg collects the wool by boat from many little islands in the Hebrides, sends it to the Natural Fibre Company, and then has it back, dyed, and sells it herself online. And she spends well over £10,000 a year with the Natural Fibre Company, so you can imagine how much she's managing to make gradually from her fibre and from her wool. Rosemary Eribe is a quite well-known designer. She's used some British wool, although she does unfortunately tend to use merino quite a lot. I've put down Fair Isle Designs not because they are a company, but because this is something special to Scotland, and this is a way that you can make dyed colours or even a range of natural colours traditional, marketable and Scottish, which does help. Harris Tweed, of course, everybody knows of. The next three, Kate Davis, Isolde and Di Gilpian, are all really interesting because they are designers who've actually, over the years, developed their own yarns and are now selling their own yarns as well. And they focus on those yarns being British and British made. And so that means that if you have some specialist fibre and you are talking carefully to the British wool depots, some of your wool may go into those and you'll get a bit more for your prices. Hunter uses very coarse wool and makes rugs, but they make really great fashionable bags as well, and they are really entirely about design, and that is so important. Their design and marketing enables them to sell bags at really quite high prices for what's basically just a piece of old rug sewn up. Of course it's more than that, but nevertheless that's the sort of thing that you need to think about. The next few are all people who you should have known and heard of, and Orkney wool is quite interesting, the other side from the Hebrides. Orkney wool, Jane, who actually, the woolsack lady as well, has lovely wool from very rare Borroway sheep. I think that is the other thing that's worth mentioning to everyone in Scotland. You have got a great selection of sheep breeds, Borroway, Soay, Shetland, Hebridean. All of those are something that you can make a name of. You can use some of them as crossbreds in with other fibres and make something. G.J. Frog, specialist on the Hebrides, or actually on Skye, and Dorset buttons, and she is the expert on Dorset buttons. And so it goes on. So there are a range of different things, all of which can show you what the possibilities are if you go for it. You can't just sit on it and expect it to sell itself, because unfortunately it won't. Right, now as a treat, and because it's difficult to do pictures at the same time as the sort of text that I've just been doing, I couldn't leave without giving you some information about individual Scottish breeds. So here is the Borroway. Quite a little sheep, about the same size as a Hebridean. Some of them are bigger. This one is one of Jane's and lives on Orkney. Natural Fibre Company and Blacker Yarns jointly made the first ever commercial batch of Borroway yarn. You can see a picture of it on the left. And this was and is always an Aran wool, because Borroway is quite coarse, but it has got a double coat, so it's fine and coarse together. And that enables it to be worn as hats and gloves quite well. We also use it in a very special yarn, which is our St Kilda yarn, when we only use a small proportion. St Kilda is 80% Shetland, but it's got 20% Boreret and Soie, which add colour and texture to a lace weight yarn, which is one of our highest selling and most loved yarns from Blacker Yarns. You can see here a picture of the ball of wool and also the picture of the sort of texture that you get with knitting in Boreret. On the other hand, you could try Hebridean. Hebrideans, again, little sheep, very popular with the conservation people because they're extremely hardy. They go anywhere. They will basically live without any attention. I mean, I have to say that going back to the Boreret, the same thing applies there. The Boreret are pretty self-caring, and they lived on St Kilda before a few were brought off the mainland to perpetuate the breed with no attention whatsoever. So these are all good sheep for managing rough pasture and areas where perhaps more commercial sheep couldn't manage. The Hebridean is about the blackest sheep, although actually Black Welsh Mountain is probably more consistently black. You can see both of these two yarns, one of them slightly reddish and the other one's got white hairs through it. And that's typical. As the Hebrideans get older, they get white hairs. I wonder what they have in common with others for that. This can be, unlike the Boreret, this is much more like a single fleece. It's not usually a double coat, although there are some which do have that, which means that the lambs produce amazingly fine wool, and you can make this into a 4-ply hand knitting yarn, which I'm happy to wear next to my skin, although I know I'm perhaps unusual in that. You then look at Herdwick. They're a bit different and they're south of the border, but I couldn't leave them out really because they're just such wonderful sheep with wonderful faces. And they live on high ground and are very, very hardy. But their wool is pretty much rugwood. You can use it for baskets. You can crochet it into solid shapes. You can use it for pot holders and teapot warmers and things like that. You really probably wouldn't want to wear it, and you certainly wouldn't necessarily want to knit it all the time. Jacob, across the pitch, you find Jacobs all over the world, all over the place, and they originally came from the Middle East. And of course, because they've got two colours, which is in effect 3 because you can mix them together on one sheep, they're a great sheep for both starting off if you want to try hand spinning and get a bit of variety, and also they're of a commercial size. They produce perfectly saleable meat carcasses, so they're again quite a useful and commercial sheep. Manx, another one, small. You don't find them very much in Scotland, but they are equally hardy and they're related to the northern short-tail sheep, the Hebridean and the Boreret. North Ronaldsay, look at all those colours. Isn't that fantastic? That's a colour chart round the bucket. And so you can get a wide range of colours, and that again is a bit like the Boreret, but probably softer. Got a higher proportion of soft wool to coarse wool within the double coat. Lovely for Aran sweaters. Soie, I've mentioned already, they're the other very rare breed. These pictures, this actual were taken, the one on the left I took on the Hebrides with a Soie flock there. The wool that Natural Fibre Company and Blacker Yarns often use comes actually from the Iron Bridge Trust, where they use them for conservation grazing on the very steep sides of the gorge. Makes a nice fine wool, and again that's the other component of the St Kilda yarn that's the favourite lace yarn from Blacker Yarns. And Shetland. Can't mention wool from Scotland without considering Shetland, and they have about 8 colours. They have very many beautiful markings, and they perhaps produce the finest fleece. Some of their fleeces can be on average 13 to 20 microns. Really lovely stuff. So that is that.